At this point, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll turn the meeting over to Susan. So you can all stand and flag right over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we'll turn it over to Sylvia.
My talk tonight is two parts. One part to introduce you to some of my family, and the second part to talk about how to take care of your family treasures. So, my sisters and brothers and I are the 7th generation to live here in Tuftonboro, and started the first generation built Ball Farm, where Marcia lives now. And her husband is also 7th generation, my cousin. So we're so lucky. We have so much information about the family, even though it's only a fraction of our overall family tree. This one line, we have so much information and knowledge and familiarity. We feel like we know a lot of these people. And with that comes a lot of mementos, like some of which I have here. The first family in our family to settle in the area was Bradbury Richardson, who was Jonathan Moulton's adopted son. And Moultonboro is named for Jonathan Moulton. And Bradbury Richardson came to live in Moultonboro and built a home that still stands and is still in the family. It may have been sold in the last year or two, but that house stayed in the family all through the years. Was built in the 1760s, 1770s. It's on Severance Road. So I don't have any pictures or mementos from the Jacob Hodgson, who built Ball Peak Farm. He married Anna Richardson, Bradbury Richardson's daughter, built Ball Peak Farm. And then his son up here in the top left is Bradbury, who married Harriet. I'm sorry. His son is Jacob, who married Anna, his daughter. Son-in-law Jacob Hodgson married Anna Richardson and built Ball Peak Farm in 1803. Their son, Bradbury Hodgson, is up here with his wife Harriet, who was also a Hodgson, but not a close relative as far as we know. They had 6 children. 2 of them are here, Jonathan Hodgson and Jacob Hodgson. Were brothers. Jonathan Hodgson lived at what is now Aunt Myra's corner. His wife was Aunt Myra. There's actually a picture of her up there, 2 pictures of her. Jonathan stayed at Ball Peak Farm. He was the oldest son. And he married, I keep getting the names wrong. Jacob stayed at Ball Peak Farm, being the oldest son. He married Mariah Blazo from Parsonsfield, Maine. Don't know how he met her, but she did have a relative who was a traveling lawyer who lived Sandwich, Tamworth, Ossipee, Rochester. So the farm passed from eldest child to eldest child. Jacob had 3 children. He had Cora, who's over here, and Grace, who's here, and Ralph. Ralph was the only son, but he was the baby. And there are some stories that have survived about him. One of them is that he was burning the hay in the field to clear the field, and the barn accidentally caught on fire. So they lost the barn, which was in the field behind where the house is now. So the community all got together and they put up a new barn. And there's a diary of that here at the museum. And Mary could tell you, how many weeks did it take them to build this new barn?
Oh, you can ask me a question.
Because I know
I copied that diary in 1969.
You don't remember?
But Orlando Richardson headed it up, and he was like the premier businessman of Melvin Village. And he lived in what is now the Jones Farm.
The farm up here on 109.
Up on 109 at the end of
It was Alice's mom. Alice's mom. Alice Richardson.
Yes. Anyway,
Oh,
he headed up all the workers that came and volunteered every day, and he was actually paid.
He was a cousin.
Yes.
So they got, the whole community came together and rebuilt the barn, put it in a new location attached to the house where it is now. So that was kind of cool.
So how long did it take?
She can't remember.
I don't remember, but it was quick. It was surprisingly quick, I remember.
Oh, it was quick, okay.
I think it was 3 days. No, maybe a month.
Yeah, weeks.
Weeks, not months and not years. 4 or 5 weeks probably. So I didn't reread that in order to do tonight's talk, obviously. So, anyway, Cora had one son, Ernest, which is my grandfather, our grandfather. Her second son died when he was a year old. And then Ernest had 2 sons, Tom and Brad, Tom being our father and Brad being Cy's father.
I see Philip and has that portrait.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So, because we've been here so long and we're all so close, we have all these things. This is a picture, this picture of Ralph was an enlargement of a photograph that they made when he was 18. He fell through the ice and got pneumonia and died. So it was a huge tragedy for them because he would have inherited and carried on the farm. Instead, it went to the 2 daughters. And I don't know how they ended up dividing it and deciding that Cora would stay there. Or they just stayed there until Ernest was old enough to move in and run it. Because Grace only had 1 child, and that was a daughter. She was younger than Ernest. So Ernest and Marion, this is Marion and Roby, they're cousins. So,
Well, let me just point out that the way they divided things was evenly. Everybody got exactly the same portion of that estate between the 2 sisters. If there was a set of salt and pepper shakers, one got the salt shaker, one got the pepper shaker. If there was a coverlet, a hand-woven coverlet by one of our ancestors, it was divided in half, and each one got 1/2 of it. And over the years, Marion Horner Roby and our grandmother, Margaret Ellis Hunter, Ernest's wife, did some swapping back and forth to get things
because
back
they
together.
had half sets of china. You know,
Yes.
It was 4 or 5 sets of china. They each had half. It's kind of silly.
So they were doing the right thing.
Yeah. So Marion and Grammy put the sets back together, and so they would each have full sets of whatever it was. It's kind of interesting. So after Ralph died, they had this photograph of him that they had copied. I don't know how many copies they made. I personally have 3. But I ended up getting the big enlarged copy. I got it, I think, about 30 years ago. It was not framed, it was just paper on a wooden frame, like you buy at the art store to do paintings on. Except it wasn't canvas, it was paper. And it had holes in it that gotten dirty in 30 years of just being propped on the shelf. And I decided that I wanted to take care of it. So I took it to Will Lehman up in Sandwich, who's a very good framer. And he's very particular and very expensive. He won't do anything that's halfway. So you have to talk it through with him what you want to have done and how much you want to spend, and decide if you're going with him or somebody else. So we took pictures of it, and in this album there's a picture of it here, and with 4 areas circled where it was punctured, damaged. So the first thing he did was he made a wooden box, to ship the picture to Massachusetts, to someone he knew who would repair it and clean it. And I can see the repairs because I know where they are, and you can see them if you're up close and you really know what to look for. So we got that done. It was not, I don't think you put it in an acid wash to clean it or to deacidify it because of the fragility of it.
It's paper, right?
It's just paper. So he cleaned it and repaired it. Sent it back to Will, and then we tried all kinds of schemes on how to frame it and how to mat it and what colors to use. And all of a sudden we both decided maybe we should look for an antique frame.
Yeah.
And he went in his barn, and the first frame he touched was the perfect vintage and the perfect size. So before that, I had this is a painting of my father that was done in the 1950s. It was given to him already framed, but the backing on it was just cardboard from a box, cardboard box. So I had taken that to Will, and he cleaned it just by brushing it because it's a watercolor. And he said if you hold just that watercolor up to the light, you can see pinholes where that acid in that cardboard has eaten through the paper. So he cleaned it. We used the original frame. He made a new mat and sealed it up. Now, both of these have UV treated glass because light is your enemy, right, Isaac?
Yeah.
It really damages things. We've had the glass in here treated, and it helps, but it's not perfect for everything. We really probably should have it done again. There are also museum quality glass, which is non-glare. And if you look up there, you can see that those aren't glaring compared to this one that I hadn't done anything to, or to the plastic pieces. You see the glare is remarkably reduced on those. So you can spend a lot of money on these things or very little. If you go the really simple route and just put things in a plastic sleeve, you want to make sure the paper that you're putting in there with them is acid-free paper. and that the sleeve is a good one, that it's not going to damage it. The larger sleeves for Jacob and Jonathan came from a museum catalog. But they're just folders. They're just so that I can lay them in a drawer, keep them clean and keep them from getting damaged. So those are fairly inexpensive. This Masonic certificate that was given to Ernest was very dirty. It was very wrinkled. There's also a picture of that in here. It had been rolled and just in a drawer and just bounced around. So that was also shipped to Boston. And that did go in a wash, but a very quick wash because they took out the major dirt and flattened it. But he didn't take out all of these stains like right here because he didn't want to lose the ink, the signatures and the red ink from the stamps. And then it's been sealed, air and water proof with a UV plastic. The same thing that we had done with that big map on the wall a few years ago, had it sealed up so that it won't get dirty. The pictures here of the sap house were both done by Harris Miller. This one, we bought our family cottage that we now use from the Millers. This one I bought from Harris when he was packing things up to move everything down to Virginia. And it was matted but not framed. This other one is one that he's done more recently. His recent Christmas cards have pictures on them photos of pictures he's painted, and he's experimenting with the blurry and the purples and the different colors. So he gave me that one of his last trips up here. So I decided that I should frame them. So we'll, you stand there and you figure out the matting and the colors, the frame. It's all well and good, till a couple of days later, when Will called me, he had a little problem. When he took the mat off this one, there was another picture on the back.
Frugal artist.
So he's like, what do I do?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. Oh my goodness.
So obviously I had to go up and look at it, and I was like, oh no, it's Wolfboro.
Yeah. Wow.
As if you were in Back Bay looking at the train station. So I was like, oh my God. So he figured out how to make a frame that could be hung either way. Special hooks, of course.
From the top, right?
Yeah. There are right here and here.
Oh,
It hangs like this
from either side.
Like little U's.
from either side.
Is that side non-glare? Because it's
No.
reflective, but
No, it's not.
I don't think.
No.
I don't think I did the non-glare on this. The piece of non-glare glass, the museum quality glass for this side, it's about $150. So
so you didn't want to do two?
there's a limit.
Plus the frames.
There's a limit.
What's the labor?
Plus the frames, right. This frame is a standard frame and it's just got the wire on the back. I thought, who would have known? But, you have all these things and what do you do? I can't throw them away. Then I get other things, like here I have the book of notes when Cora died. my grandmother kept records of who came to the service, who sent flowers, who sent cards. And then I have American Family Robinson, this nice little book, inscribed to Ralph H. Hodgson from Miss Sullivan, 1892. Or this one, to Cora and Gracie from Lizzie.
Lizzie Hodgson?
That's why you have grandchildren, you know.
Then I have these two books, leather bound, in really good condition, and they're,
With the marbling on the edges.
yeah, they're Ancient History by Charles Rowland, which is a famous history book. But look, J. Hodgson, Melvin Village, New Hampshire. Look at that. And they're both signed the same way.
And they don't teach cursive.
They don't teach cursive anymore.
I'm sure that's cursive.
That's script. This is 1857. So
So how do you keep your old books
Dry.
dry?
Dry. You have to dust them. You have to.
Yeah.
There are solutions you can get to keep the bugs out. They're really susceptible to bugs. Moisture is probably the biggest enemy. And mildew.
So not the basement.
Not the basement, unless your basement's very dry, which some are. Or you could install a dehumidifier to take care of your basement. It's only money.
But that's why we have our library in the upstairs of the barn here now, is
Oh, yeah.
because it is climate controlled,
Well, temperature control.
temperature controlled
Yeah.
up there. And it's drier. Our library was in the back of this building, and it was very damp back there.
Yeah.
And so the upstairs of the barn is a much better location.
Like that map on the wall was in very bad condition, and we sent it down to Northeast Document Center, and they peeled the linen from the paper backing and cleaned it, and you couldn't see the color blue when they started. I mean, it was a mustard, the whole thing was a mustard color. Mustard and gray. And you can see, if you look at it now, you can see that there are 6 sections to it, the way it was made. And they took all those sections off and pieced them back together on, what was it, Japanese rice paper or something that was more stable and non-acidic. And then they did the acid wash and all of that.
Wow.
And sealed it up and brought it back. Well, when we brought it back, I picked it up in my Nissan van. It was, I don't know, how many years ago did we do this? 15 years ago? Something like that. And you weren't supposed to bend it because you don't want to break the seal that's around the edges. But that van had a huge cargo area, and I was able to just curve it in there and get it home. And we were going to keep it at the town office in the winter and here in the summer, but it just wasn't practical because it's bigger than you think. When you take it off the wall, you can't, you just keep moving it back and forth, you're gonna break that seal and the moisture's gonna get back in. Ideally, we should probably take that up in the barn every winter and put it up there. One more thing to look at there. So it would be happier if it were in a constant temperature, constant humidity situation. So we've done, in the museum, besides that, we have done the painting that's up there on the wall of the old schoolhouse. We've had that restored. And there's another painting over here in the corner of the game farm that we also had restored. These are all expensive projects that require fundraising. But, and other things, we're using the simple plastic sleeves as we have the time and money. And you can also get things like acid-free photo corners, that if we want to have the time to go through all our photo albums and redo them on acid-free paper with acid-free corners, it's another project. So what other questions do we have? But wait a minute.
What about your program for making digital copies of digital pictures? Is that just about the objects in the museum, or did it include pictures of that?
We had spent 2 seasons photographing everything in the museum and trying to get it onto a computer. We got a computer, we got the software, and we didn't get much further than that. The software turned out to be too challenging for us to operate. It requires somebody who has specific training in curating, and we never got the pictures transferred to the computer. So we have the pictures on discs of the stuff that we had when we did it. The newer stuff has not been photographed. We don't have any paid help. Nobody we can crack the whip on.
So you can't use it? Can't use it?
Well, we have those. We have the pictures. We have the documentation. And we don't keep it in here, so if this burns, we have the records up until whatever year that was that we did it.
Have you any idea how well it's being kept? I mean, is it
Up the town hall, isn't it?
Yeah, the disc.
The discs, the CDs.
Up to the town hall.
Yeah, well, there's some up in the barn.
Yeah.
Up in the barn, so.
Need to be transferred.
And I have a set at home.
It's good for storing stuff then, for some future use, and hopefully you get somebody that knows how to do it.
I know.
Other historical societies ran into the same problem in the area,
Yeah.
that were adamant about doing the digital records and everything, but they ran into the same problem because they don't have any hired professional help. They don't have the money to hire these professionals to do this digitizing, and so they ended up just taking pictures like we did and storing the pictures
Yeah.
and saying that, that was what they could do for now.
Right, which would be useful if we had an insurance claim or something, but.
People do for homeowners,
Right.
keep records.
Richard?
How is Ernest related to the Ellis that was up at the castle?
Ernest married Margaret Ellis, and her father was Fred Ellis, who was an engineer.
Yeah.
They lived in Melrose, but they vacationed in the Wolfboro, Tuftonboro area because Fred Ellis's wife was from Wolfboro, and she was descended from Henry Rust, and all the famous families in Wolfboro were in her genealogy.
She was a Ferber, and Ferber, F-U-R-B,
Oh.
and she was descended from the Chases and the Rusts and
Thompson.
Moses Thompson and all the famous
All the
people in
names.
Wolfboro. And so that's why they vacationed there.
So he came up every summer to vacation, right? And they rented your house some of those years. They rented your.
During the winter because they cut a hole in the front room where they could put a pipe through for a stove. I think father told us about that.
Yeah. So,
We married.
Fred had jobs. He didn't take the summer off. He found jobs that he could do working from Melvin Village.
Oh, that's why he got the castle job.
So he got the job of building the roads at the castle. Did that 1 year or 2 years. I don't know how long they spent on that. I can't imagine they did all those roads in 1 year, but maybe. Another year, he rebuilt the road 109 through the Narrows. It used to go just past the Mirror Lake Church. It went up over the hill and down by Museum Lodges.
Wow.
And now it goes straight through on the bottom side of it. And it was kind of funny because the selectmen this year were worried about the springs in the road. It's always a mess there. And I can remember Grammy telling me about when he built that road, what a time he had with the springs. They just have to keep redoing it, and we're still redoing it today. And another year, he worked in Ticonderoga, New York, the year my father was born. So that's why my father was born in Ticonderoga, New York, because Grammy went to be with her husband when it was time to have the baby.
2 weeks from Tuftonboro
So,
and my father was
so that's the connection. She was,
Yeah, Ernest, our grandfather, whose father-in-law was Fred Ellis, worked for Fred Ellis.
right. When he needed her.
Yeah,
Ran the farm, but he had hired hands that ran the farm for him when he was away. Kind of fun. Well, thank you. Oh,
Oh, I
Max.
have a question. Could you share the significance of the sugar shack? Why do you have those,
The sap
the
house,
sap house?
that's the family sap house that we use today. We built it in 1922.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, Jacob in the early 1800s probably started sapping on the property. There was a sap house in the field near where the barn was that stood for many years until, I don't know, 1985 or something, when the wind blew it down just one time too many, and my uncle didn't want to pay to have it put back. It had been used as a tool shed. They outgrew that little sap house and built this one in 1922. We're still using it. If you go in and look at it, it's pretty interesting because a lot of it is made from recycled materials, recycled timbers from barns or whatever. They never threw those things away.
Right.
Saved them to reuse
What
them.
the kids ought to learn today. Kids should learn that today.
so it's our new sap house, and it was built in 1922.
Okay, the new one.
That's great.
remodeled.
And this is the other side of it, is that it?
No,
It's
those are the
just
same
different
side,
season.
just a different time of year.
Oh,
Perspective.
And the painter had a different idea on how to do it.
I guess.
I see.
I think it's
And
pretty
that is on 171?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a Roby,
Marion Roby?
Marion Roby. Is that who married Tom Plant, or?
No,
Oh.
no. Marion lived down here in the village on the bridge where
Where I
Mary
used to
lived,
live.
Oh, yeah.
where we had
Right,
the
right.
needle nest.
She ran the store, and her mother was
Sister.
Grace
Grace.
Hodgson.
Oh,
Thought it was
I
Marion.
met her when I was first here.
I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So she was
Yeah.
my
She was a
grandfather's cousin.
Oh,
And I don't know where.
And she never had any children, so, you know, that was another.
I don't know where her husband came
well
from.
then, where's, the Roby name is in.
She married a Roby.
George Wilbur.
Oh,
She
But I don't know
married
where he
He's had
was from.
castle for a while. Entirely different. Entirely
Maybe.
different.
Roby is in the Tom Plant story.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, Mr. Roby.
No relation.
That's a different Roby.
No relation.
Okay, that's, all right.
Richard Roby was the founder of
Hertz.
Avis Rent-A-Car.
Okay, whatever.
Well, one of them.
Whichever rent your car. And he lived,
Budget.
he came from Melrose, and he lived right up the
Okay,
street
from
from Fred. His parents lived right up the street from Fred Ellis.
So his estate was down on Tuftonboro Neck. It was called Whispering Pines. And if you go down to the end,
Yeah. Fork.
To the Marriott.
all the way down,
All the way down.
and then you would take a left to go into the Marriott compound.
He was
when
on
you-
the right,
He was on the right.
big farm, yeah.
Yeah, there was one house there. Now there's 6 mansions
Yeah.
where his one
Well,
estate was.
Well, there's a farm back.
So he
That
bought the
wasn't his
castle
farm.
in the clouds
That wasn't his farm, yeah.
in the 60s, I think, late 60s, mid 60s. He bought the castle. And at that point, for a few years before that, it had been run as a tourist destination.
Yeah.
And he continued that and improved on it a little bit and then sold it. His sons ran it. He didn't personally run it. So that's where Roby comes. The funny thing is, he bought it from a man named Toby. So Roby.
That's my cat's name, Toby.
Well, now you can call him Toby Roby.
Toby, Toby.
All right, well, thank you all for
Oh,
coming.
that was great.
We've got refreshments, which I assume Marcia had a hand in over there, and
Wow.
Joni or somebody else.
Fans back. Super.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. You might
Thanks,
want to
Sue.
look over there.
Thank you.
Okay.